VR Chat, the next frontier. These are the experiences from Gunters' universe. His continuing mission? To seek out and connect with VR devs and passionate enthusiasts. To discuss theories, beliefs, and rhetoric of all kind. And to boldly go where no show has ever gone before.
Hello everyone and welcome to Gunters' Universe. This is the bestest and mostest awesomest show broadcasting from the metaverse. Tonight on Gunters' Universe show number 15, I speak with Justin Moravetz, lead developer and founding member of Zero Transform. He is well known for his VR titles Vanguard V and Proton Pulse. And normally I'm joined... Yeah, thank you Justin, thanks for showing up here and coming to hang out with us in the metaverse. Unfortunately, Mr. Whiskers isn't here. I'm not sure what's going on there. He usually is my co-host, but that just seems to be the case. I would have really enjoyed you meeting him. But yeah, Gunters' Universe broadcasts live from VR Chat every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. You can join us in studio by simply downloading VR Chat from vrchat.net. And then just find the Gunters' Universe room and join us. And you can also watch the stream that's available now at hitbox.tv/Gunter444. It's another way to check things out and join us. So yeah, Justin, thanks for coming out. I'm really excited about interviewing you and talking to you today.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's start things off by going way back before your days of development, when you were a wee little lad, when you were just getting into technology. When did you get your first computer?
Oh, let's see. I mean, I was introduced to the VIC-20 in like 1985 or so. This predates the Commodore 64, and my dad had hacked it, so there was a little turn knob, and it would just go through a variety of ROMs internally and play some games. But what really started me off was my first computer. I did a bunch of raking and yard work to buy an Amiga 500. And Proton Pulse is actually an homage to that time. There's a lot of Amiga references and a variety of things in there.
Very cool. That must have been a lot of raking and lawn mowing, I would imagine.
You would think, but it was actually just one house that had the two big-ass trees, so I would just go there every few days.
Oh, that's cool. So did you attend arcades back in your day? Was that a thing for you?
Oh, wherever possible. I mean, I remember the sound and smell of arcades very distinctly because they were usually pretty near a food court. But you would hear Turtles in Time or the Simpsons arcade, and things would progress, and you would see things that had polygons, and you run around in helicopters and shoot things with Sega Saturn-like graphics. And but really, what really caught my attention was the Virtua series, where you'd have Virtua Racing and Virtua Fighter and things along those lines. So that's when I first started to see polygons coming in, and this was at the era when everybody was saying virtual reality is coming, and so I saw more and more evidence of this in an arcade, and I would get really excited, and I'm like, okay, show it to me, I want to see this.
Yeah, I remember Turtles in Time and Simpsons and Mortal Kombat. Those were the days, and back at the skating rinks were a place that I used to play a lot of arcade games. So what about consoles? What about Nintendos and I don't know, Neo Geos or Sega?
I was a fan of Nintendo. So I got the Nintendo, Mario 3, Super Nintendo shortly after that. But then I got fascinated with the design of the games. It was something that really confused me. So I landed a Sega Genesis, and I'm like, where's the Genesis equivalent of Zelda, or where's the Genesis equivalent of F-Zero and such? And it didn't really work that way. So behind me is 42 consoles hooked up to a CRT, ranging from 1977 to recent generation. And it's kind of like a library. You would see an attorney with legal books and a doctor with medical books. And I keep a history of game design, and I study both poor and good ideas. And it's good to have that dynamic.
That's awesome. Do you have a CDI back there?
I do. I have that's actually the most recent one I got. But yeah, there's CDI, Neo Geo, home console, and the CD version and portable version. It's nuts. It's definitely a pretty good library.
Yeah, I had a CDI. I don't know why. Somehow my mother bought it for me, and it was way too expensive, but she did. And I remember playing through Burn Cycle.
Wow, I haven't tried Bird Cycle. I'm actually struggling real hard to find what I would call a video game on that console. I mean, I've tried the Zelda.
Oh, really?
I don't know what I would classify the Zelda games. I've seen Tetris, and it looked more like a screensaver that you'd see back in Windows 3.1, where it just cycle through pretty backgrounds and like, woo, 256 colors, yay. But yeah, it's that console is interesting because I've talked to some of the developers back when they were working with Nintendo, and they genuinely thought that the projects they were making for the Zelda franchise was better than what Nintendo was producing, and I found that really hard to believe, but at the same time, I mean, they had no reason to say otherwise. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing to get into another developer's mind.
Yeah, it's a weird console to say the least. I saw on YouTube that there's a Mario 2 theme song that has your names attached to it somehow. Is that a real thing, or is it just a coincidence?
Whoa, that's old. Yeah, no, that's me. I used to do a lot of game remakes, essentially. If that's the banjo version, that one's me. Although I've seen a couple times, and this is odd, where somebody would take something that I wrote and put my name on it, but use a different version of a song. Or you would hear them in the background breathing, and a double click because they'd use a microphone to record it for YouTube. So the recordings might be a little off, or they might not actually be mine at all, but for some reason the name sticks around.
Interesting. So I'm going to try to pull it up here. I'm having a little bit of trouble. Let's see what happens.
Oh, the anticipation.
There we go.
Yep, that would be mine.
So I love Mario 2. It's sort of my favorite for some reason. I just played the hell out of it, just had it, and it was so weird. I like weird stuff.
Yeah, back in this time, I heard a couple other remixes of this, but they were all using a honky-tonk, and so I brought in 3 banjo and 1 bass, because I don't know, I just wanted to hear something slightly different at that time.
What year was that you were doing the remix?
Oh, let's see, 2000?
Yep, that's when I was listening to a lot of remixes that I would download off Napster. Those were the days.
Yeah, I mean, this part of the song is actually the second half that was introduced with Mario 2 when it came out in the United States. And Doki Doki Panic, it was missing half of the song, so whenever I play that, it just throws me off every single time.
Yeah, I don't think that's familiar to me.
Oh, have you heard of Doki Doki? It's, so interesting story about this game. Doki Doki Panic was a game in Japan, and Mario 2 in Japan was actually very, very hard levels that were not appropriate to the United States audience, according to Nintendo at the time. And so they took Doki Doki Panic and put Mario characters in it. And so Mario 2 is actually a completely different game. Yeah, definitely check out Doki Doki Panic.
That, actually, I don't think I played it, but I remember seeing something like that and going weird, you know.
Lost levels woo.
Yeah, I can't finish Lost levels.
Too.
Every time I try, I get gray hair or I lose hair, either or.
Can't beat the first 2 levels. Huh.
I got to World 7, and then I had to quit and save my marriage.
Yeah, I should go back and try that. I'd love to see how far I can get nowadays. I've actually been playing Lost Vikings. You remember that title?
Wow, yeah, I remember first seeing Lost Vikings. I'm like, I want to go back and play Lemmings, you know, so it's kind of a step game for me.
Yeah. I actually met the designer of that in Converge, Ron Millar. it's really interesting. He worked at Interplay and some of the first founding members of Blizzard, so talked a bit about that, and he's a pretty rad dude. And you know, I didn't think about Lost Vikings until meeting him a few weeks ago.
I see a green line. This looks familiar.
Yes, yes. And clicking on my notes again, yeah, let's talk about your dev career here. How did you get started in game development?
So this is something that I've always wanted to do. I knew this for a very long time. There were two avenues. There was game development, like visual art and things like that, or music. And so I flipped a coin, not literally, but I went for the art and design thing. And strangely enough, Jake Haufmann flipped the same coin and got the music. Thank God, because that guy's amazing. Yeah, we're like 6 days apart from our date of birth or whatever. But
Wow.
so I went to college in the Midwest for 3D art and animation, and that college at the time was on its last throes. There were some issues in management, so we decided let's not keep it anywhere close to where we live. Let's go to where it's done properly, and we went to DigiPen, me and my wife at the time. So we went up to Seattle and went to DigiPen, which was part of Nintendo Software Technology. Some of the instructors were from Valve, from Nintendo, and a variety of animation studios. And the thing about that place is that they put you in crunch on day one. It's 20 credit hours required to even pass on time, and it has a 2/3 dropout rate. So it's definitely intense. But after graduating from there, I landed a gig at Sony Bend, which is in Central Oregon. And they're responsible for the Siphon Filter series, Resistance Retribution for the PSP. And the last title that I worked on was Uncharted Golden Abyss for the PlayStation Vita. And I did that for about 9.5 years. And then something magical happened. VR came out, and I've been working with a variety of VR headsets for quite some time at that point, but it was the first time that game development and virtual reality converged. It was something that I could take seriously and show people these worlds. And so I started developing Proton Pulse. Now, I was still at Sony at the time, and so things got a little hairy at first because I didn't tell Sony about the Proton Pulse Kickstarter because there wasn't really any need to at that point. And it got funded, I think, in like 12 hours or something like that. And then there was the PAX. Now, right after I got back from PAX is when the funds from Kickstarter would come in, and that's when I was called into the technical director's office, and he had on the table a early prototype Morpheus. Now, there was an instant conflict of interest right there on the table, but the rules say I have to disclose that. Otherwise, had I been caught trying to hide something at that point, it could have been problematic. Plus, I really wanted to see if I can get this title on the Morpheus whenever that came out. So I shut his door and I told him about Proton Pulse, and then he played it and he got really excited really fast. And so they sent it off to Sony headquarters. They loved it. It was great. Things were looking awesome. Until it hit the legal department. And the legal department, you know, they have to protect Sony from a lot of things. So they tend to overcompensate for little things. And so they were concerned that because I developed this with an Oculus DK1, that Oculus would come and sue those guys. And I was on the phone. I'm like, you do realize Shuhei Yoshida said on Twitter that he's got 3 and that he loves them. But I'm not Shuhei Yoshida, so I can't get away with that. So the legal department had a prepared statement for me. I had to refund everybody. So I couldn't explain what was going on to anybody, which was really, really hard. It was definitely a tough time. And I was also asked to, make it disappear. And that's not something I was willing to do. I was actually contacted by Oculus, and they were much smaller at the time. I got a direct phone call from a few guys, including Nate Mitchell. I mean, that's one of those things I would it would be very difficult to pull off these days. But they asked me, what do I need? And I told them essentially what was going down, and they thought it was kind of funny that they thought that Sony thought that they would come and sue them, but because that's definitely not their mantra. But time went on, and so I decided to finish Proton Pulse on my spare time and start development on a new title. This title, Vanguard V, at the time was called Project Wormhole, and so I got some voice actors along, and then I set up a meeting with Oculus at GDC 2014, I believe. Yeah, that's right. And so I had 3 weeks before meeting them, so I made 80% of what we see in Vanguard V within that 3 weeks. And that was very intense. Now, the person at Oculus who would review this used to work at EA, and he really wanted to see Call of Duty, essentially. And so that didn't go so well, and then a couple days later they announced their Facebook acquisition. But something magical happened at that GDC. Jake Haufmann, the musician who worked on many of the tracks for Proton Pulse and all of Vanguard V and my new title, Pulsar Arena, played a live performance at an event, and I decided then that I needed to go independent. Yeah, this music
So we're
is
looking
actually...
at it now.
This particular title is written by Jake Haufmann, and the singer is Jesse Seeley. Wow.
So now you're watching yourself, and we're listening to you on a video while you're here.
Very meta. If you look there, there's a couple of misspellings in my LinkedIn there.
I recently finished a game called Proton Pulse. Some of you may have already
So here's Proton Pulse. I mean, that was a community favorite. I remember getting my DK1 2 years ago to this month, and then hearing about your challenges, and it's quite sad. We were upset. But then here comes Vanguard V, and then we're happy again. Except you had some struggles a little bit with that, the original title, Vanguard Valkyrie.
Yeah, there's an interesting story behind that. Oh, I love that guy, by the way. That guy's awesome, and she's been fantastic as well. Yeah, that's the live performance at GDC by both of those guys. They performed Proton Pulse songs, and that was the moment I decided to leave. I haven't seen this video in ages. And I'm looking at the footage here. I'm like, whoa, this is out of date.
Yeah. Kind of what I found. I should have actually seen if there were any videos that you would like me to pull up, which, if there is, I can of course do the search. But I have a few from Proton Pulse and Pulsar, which we'll talk about in just a moment.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, and there's a video just called Vanguard V in the Zero Transform channel, where it has how people review playing it and reacting and stuff, and that's generally what I show. But the voice here, Jessie Seeley, she's the partner with Jake Haufmann for the new Ren project that was recently through Kickstarter and succeeded. And she handles the voice of Rix and QGK from that series and a variety of other things. But she's an amazing person as well, so her and Jake Haufmann are definitely a fantastic duo when it comes to music.
Yeah, I love it. Let's turn it up.
VR chat.
That's not it. So happy I have a button to turn that off, because last week, if I hit that, we'd have to listen to it for a minute. So good.
Man, you should see the cloud level now.
Oh, I can't wait. So, tell us more about the game. It's the input is your head. You essentially use your face to move your character around. Tell us about those mechanics. How did you get inspired to create this theme to the game, and why choose that kind of mechanic?
Have you ever watched somebody play Super Mario Brothers? You notice when they're trying to get over a giant hole in the ground or anything like that, their whole body leans over. And I decided to use that. So, I mean, VR in the early days didn't really have unified input other than head tracking. And I developed a couple of techniques for navigating menus and things like tapping the head-mounted display on the side to get through Proton Pulse and a few things like that. But in this case, I thought, you know, the easiest way to fly is just to look where you want to go. I mean, everybody kind of sways when they're flying around and things like that in a few other games. So I went with that route, but I needed to find a way to do that without making somebody sick. And so the forward movement is at a constant. You're never rotating, slowing down, speeding up, or anything along those lines. So that's why the character is in third person in this case. You can see yourself in context, and the camera is always at a constant. But it also allows me to mix up gameplay a lot. So the head tracking for an input, I put in a lot of thought on, well, how am I going to target things? And there's been a lot of tweaks done in that. How am I going to mix up the gameplay? Because you basically only have one controller. And I really don't want people to have to think about what they have to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you see little cues of that from the early prototype where your targeting reticle, when it first comes up, something flies in front of it no matter what, so it targets and shoots it. It's supposed to show how that mechanic works. And if you start the game from the executable, when you're calibrating your head-mounted display, it has you shoot these things just so I can calibrate it a little bit better and so you understand how the firing works. But because one thing I really hate in games is when they stop everything and show you some text or show you a screen with what buttons to press. I'm very much against that. I want it to be as intuitive as humanly possible. And so that's when we decided to bring in Bit, a second character, whose sole purpose is to basically stream everything he sees to her visor. So she's seeing herself from a third person, but technically it's a first-person game. And with this mechanic, level to level, boss to boss, I can switch up how a lot of things function. And I'm really looking forward to showing you guys that once the game is further along.
I think that's really interesting. Anybody can then jump in because it's just using their face to move. You know, and I love that analogy to Mario. I mean, if you watch, tons of people play that game. They're moving their whole body, and especially people that aren't good with the controller, you know, that's how they move. I remember seeing my mom or my wife do the same thing. So, you know, being able to like accommodate them with the controls is pretty awesome. Do you have any idea or any do you want to implement controller support, or is it just going to be the face input?
Controller support will be considered an option. And so the game is going to be designed with head tracking, but there will be people who will want to change how controls work. And I believe in having choices and along those lines. But I'm very adamant about not force-feeding any gimmicks. So you might not see certain types of input function with this title. But we're looking into detaching the flying character from where you look and targeting and things along those lines. But the game will primarily be designed for head tracking.
Cool. I wanted to see what Jake's music, where people can go to get that.
He has a Bandcamp. I think it's vert.bandcamp.com. But yeah, there's a lot of soundtracks, including the recent Pulsar Arena one. The Proton Pulse, I think, is on its own Bandcamp as well. And the Vanguard V soundtrack is still in development, so there's nothing specific for that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I want to show some Proton, and then we'll move into Pulsar. Want to make sure everybody gets to see Proton, because that's such a great game.
Yeah, I mean,
Diabolical
here it comes. Yeah.
OAI has been spreading its evil grasp across the galaxy.
I love your aesthetic.
Elements of the universe. Charge the Proton.
Yeah, we wanted the intro story to be a lot like a cheesy Sega CD intro.
Nice. Another intuitive, head tracking control. anybody could play this.
Yeah, one of the things that came up is people kept asking, won't I break my neck? I'm like, try it first.
Yeah, no, I don't. There's definitely sometimes when it goes pretty fast that you might have to go for it.
Press spacebar, it slows down time.
Anytime?
It recharges, but yeah, it's called the space-time dilator.
I didn't even know that. I like playing things at full speed and stuff. Even though it probably would have helped me progress, but it sure is a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, so we're working on the PC version, the full version, to release on Steam and a variety of other things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, this music's epic.
Because like all of those ending sequences.
And it rolls right into Pulsar, so I'm going to lower the music a little bit because we got a couple of videos to look at. Well, actually, this is the trailer, and then I got the milestone number 3.
Yeah, milestone 3 is where it's at for sure.
So I'll turn this down and you can talk about it a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, I love that part of the song, though. So Pulsar Arena was my entry to the VR Game Jam. And it was start to finish 6 weeks of development. So all the character modeling, animation, art, everything, absolutely everything was done in 6 weeks. And
incredible.
What we wanted was a multiplayer game for VR, specifically that worked on the strengths of a head tracking for mobile. And so as soon as I'm done,
I can turn this up or I can fast forward.
Google Glass.
We'll turn it up.
I do believe we just lost him.
Here I come.
Welcome back. Yeah. I love this. So I have a gear, so I was able to check this out. Again, another aesthetic that I love. I mean, around me here is a sort of minimalistic, in that vein. So I'm just a big fan of that. Tron and Olivier JT, one of our friends. I love his design. He actually did all the geometry in this room.
So the premise of this game is a 2-player multiplayer experience, and it's a game of balance. You're flying through space in this giant hourglass arena, and if you have more blocks than the other player, your floor starts to take damage and you'll fall to the pulsar below. But I was trying to figure out how to do fighting without having anything but head tracking, because the Gear VR doesn't have much for input, but at least it's without any tether, so it's a 360 experience as well. And there's the hourglass.
So what's the inspiration?
I just really like rhythm games, honestly. So I mean, there's nothing really specific I can think of as far as that goes. I mean, I've seen other like balloon popping type things, but I was more focused on the comboing, the power-ups, and a variety of things like that. And wow, that's a lot of character animation. I can't believe I got through all that.
Yeah.
Did you hand animate?
A lot of this was done with mocap as a base, and then I would hand animate on top of that.
Oh, cool.
I mean, yeah, you almost flipped the coin and did sound, so it makes sense that you have a love for this, and you obviously have your friend helping you with the soundtrack, which just obviously makes this super awesome.
And then getting all the voice people in. So the guy on the right is Danny Bitbang in the game, but he's a game grump. He's Danny Sexbang from a band called Ninja Sex Party, and he's got a lot of followers and things, and so I was quite honored to have him involved. We've also got Cymatic Bruce, as you saw, Carl Krantz, who I'm using the character of right now, and the Jesse Seeley, the voice actress, or the musician vocal from Vanguard V and from New Ren, is also the robotic girls from the New Ren project in here. So I had a lot of character support from people. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I love that, you know, being able to recognize some of our friends from the community.
That's day one from Vanguard V, the infection. But it wasn't labeled, so you got the exclusive info on that.
Wait, what? I didn't get that.
So in this video, it shows a backdrop of this giant wormhole thing with a bunch of orange coming out hitting the planet, right there. And that's the first day of the infection from the parasites from Vanguard V.
Interesting. So maybe you can help me. I want a wormhole over there, slowly rotating. Which you can't see me, but I'm pointing right now. You're looking in the direction though.
Yeah.
Somewhere out in space, there's somehow to bring some life out there. So maybe we'll talk afterwards, and you can advise me.
Oh, dude, just give me this thing for an hour. You know, yeah.
Done. In fact, interview over. We're gonna go work on the set. So that's pretty much the video. Let me flip back over to my notes.
That was cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Anything else on Pulsar? I mean, are
Yes.
you going to continue it? There's another gear coming out. What is the mobile in your mind? What is going to be your role with mobile development going forward?
So let me get into Pulsar Arena here real fast. Like I mentioned, everything was made in 6 weeks. There was a lot of support to help me finish that from a variety of voice actors and things. And my buddy Jake Haufmann, who did all of the coding for that. He's actually to my right now working on it. But something happened on the very last day. So they had a submission process where you would send your build, and they would send it back signed with authentication and all that stuff. Well, my app, like a few other people's apps, would crash after it would go through that. And so I talked to Oculus and like, hey, what do I do? And they're like, well, you have two options. You can change the setting, or you can update the SDK. Well, the advice I got was actually incorrect. The setting wasn't there. It was somewhere else. And updating the SDK proved to be somewhat fatal. So the tutorials busted. The game was busted, but in a way that it looked like it was working, but very, very sloppy, which was very unfortunate. It would have been better had it just crashed right at the beginning, because then it would look intentional. But yeah, it was a dark time for sure. But I then picked up the pieces, and this, we're working on it as I'm here actually. And
Awesome.
Oculus has been. I mean, I gotta say, I work with Sony, I work with Google, and Valve, and all of these guys, and Oculus has been fantastic. They've been there day one, giving me support however they're capable of doing so. And Google's been quite a help with their cardboard. And when it comes to mobile, while graphically not as impressive, it's the freedom of being able to not be tethered to something that is so empowering in VR. And so, like in Pulsar Arena, it being a 360 experience, I mean, you could swipe forward and backward on the touchpad with the Gear VR to just rotate 90 degrees real fast, in case you're in a sitting experience, but it's really a huge thing. And so this project has been my go-to project for doing research and development. I took my mocap rig, which is an optically tracked thing, and transmitted the skeletal tracking data via Wi-Fi into my Gear VR. And I have this really bad video of me, the overweight self that I am, with a power glove with optical tracked things, playing this game in room positional scale. It was unbelievable. I had a power glove, and it was in my hand in VR, and I could shoot these blocks, and it was incredible. But at the same time, I'm playing this game in YouTube, and nobody can see what I'm doing, so it's only cool to me. But yeah, I mean, but it was powerful to have no wires at all. And so It's only going to get better. I mean, VR down the road. Let's take a look at the Wii U. I mean, it's not a very powerful system, but the one thing they have is no discernible latency between the console and the portable controller with the screen on it, and that's only going to get better. And so I'm really looking forward to that. As far as mobile goes right now it's the most viable VR option there is right now. I mean, we can get DK2s pretty simply these days, but most people, when they go to Best Buy, you know, they're going to see potentially a Gear VR there. I just got one in my town.
Yeah, that's where I bought my Gear, and yeah, I love the not being tethered. I mean, this is huge. This is how I share VR with people. It looks good. I actually played Pulsar standing up because I don't have a swivel chair because I live in an RV and I'm limited in what's going on here. Luckily I didn't fall over, and luckily I don't fall over in all the other titles, but it's incredible to be standing and moving around and playing playing these things.
Yeah, one thing I need to work on that game is the intuitive of getting combos, because you have to start on beat 1 of any measure and hit 4 of the same color in a row. And once you get it, oh yeah, you can stack these things up and you can dominate. But getting a person to that point without any instruction whatsoever is something I'm ironing out.
Yeah, I struggled a little bit, and I was aware of the tutorial problem, but was able to, when I saw your updated video, get past that, but definitely would like to see a little bit more to help me get better at the game.
Yeah, and the difficulty was a bit rushed because of the VR jam, but we've put a lot of love into it. But yeah, I mean, cool. Oculus, I mean, I can say without a doubt this game is getting finished. It's getting finished for Gear VR, and it is also coming to PC. And that wouldn't be possible without the support for Oculus. So big round of applause for those guys for helping me out.
That's great to hear. Yeah. Right on. So you're getting some support from Oculus. Kind of wanted to talk about the other, like CV1, and Touch and Vive and all these things that are coming out, Morpheus, and what's your, support with those, and how hard is it to kind of have all those available to you, and especially you have a couple titles going on, so, and what is that like? You're obviously very busy.
Busy's a word, yeah. It's a very short word, so it's kind of hard to describe how busy it really is. So, I mean, here's the real problem. When you're independent and you don't have a means to support people who help you, you have to spend a lot of your time looking for that support. And most of the time that support, no matter how much you chase one venue, doesn't actually follow through. So we've seen some accelerators over the last year, like Rothenberg Ventures and things along those lines. But to find something that works with your setup generally is pretty difficult. And so for a while I did some consulting, and that took up all of the time as well. So I'm like, no, I'm not working for other people. I'm here for a reason. And so that what I'm trying to do now is kind of pull back on that and focus and bootstrap as much as I can. This was something that was kind of a shocker when doing the Kickstarter for Vanguard V, because the budget was very specific for a team, very tight. I mean, we all would have worked at McDonald's and had more take-home pay. But it was hard to kind of educate people as to why a title like this takes a budget like that, because Kickstarter is really good for 1 or 2 man teams. Or if you say you've made Mega Man or something very popular in the past, you'll do really well. But here's VR. Not very many people are very familiar with it, yada, yada. So I focused on working with Sony, working with Oculus, working with Valve, all these names that I could, to kind of get a head start on the hardware. And when it comes to the Morpheus, was my first input method experience that I was very impressed with. Back when I was still working at Sony, the first thing I did was hold a sword in VR, and I moved my arm away so I can look at the tip of the sword. This is kind of a test I do. And it was just a single motion. I wasn't compensating for anything, and it was nice and stable, so I knew the tracking was solid. So I was very impressed. And I really hope Sony ships a move set with every Morpheus, because that would be powerful. And the Morpheus, while it's not the highest spec, it's very easy to use, and its barrier of entry is very low. I mean, any one of us could go get a PlayStation 4 and just plug this sucker in. And yeah. I'm often criticized by well, that thing is really low power. How do you expect to do VR? I'm like, I'm doing VR on a cell phone. I mean, I'll turn down a couple of shaders, and everything's going to be fantastic. And I'm really impressed how powerful and capable that system is. I haven't really had to turn down anything so far. So, yeah, it's really, really neat. And Sony has been great about providing the hardware and the tools necessary. It's more difficult to ask for any publishing support. They've got a lot of other titles that they have to work with and things along those lines. But Shuhei Yoshida is a fantastic guy and loves VR to death. So props to him for sure. When it came to Vive and Valve, I was invited to see their AR room, the head-mounted display they had demoing at the time last September. And we spent the day converting Vanguard V to that system, and we walked away successful in that. But it also gave me a heads up on where things were going. Now, the thing about Valve is communication can be very difficult because they work with lots and lots of game developers. And so you have to be loud. You have to give them something that's worth their time. You can't just go there with an idea. You have to have a playable demo that showcases something. And Pulsar Arena was originally designed with room scale in mind, knowing that I would like to work on the Vive. And I am on this list that I'm told, but I have not received my Vive yet. Now Oculus.
That's unfortunate.
Oculus, however, has been, like I said, supportive since day one. And so they provided me with the tools that I need to make everything work. And I got a chance to try out the touch controllers, work with them, integrate them into Pulsar Arena to see how they function. And I went there not expecting to fall in love with an input method, but these controllers are fantastic. I think currently my favorite input in all of VR. And there's a number of reasons for that. The haptic feedback is not just a rumble. It's something with much less latency. And so I put the beat of Pulsar Arena in my hands, and I could feel it, and that was incredible. And it senses when your fingers are resting on it or when it's pressing the button or not resting on it. So you can do hand gestures and things really, really easily. And their SDK is basically like their Oculus stuff. It's drag, drop, done. So that team is doing a fantastic job. And so I'm prepping a lot of my titles to work with the next generation of VR with a Crescent Bay and with Morpheus. And I'm supposed to be getting my upgraded Morpheus soon. Sony's been pretty on the ball with that. E3 slows things down throughout the entire industry. And I'm supposed to have the Vive sometime this summer. They haven't really specified. But the time it takes to support each of those systems is pretty considerable because a lot of what I do is still in mobile VR because that's what's available right now. I have to make sure to keep support for that. And there's been a few attempts at cross-compatibility, running some scripts and things along those lines. But my projects are so run and gun, do it as fast as you can because time is of the essence that I tend to make things a little messy. And so every time I need to switch a platform, it takes an hour just to re-import everything. It's kind of nuts, but somehow I get it done, and it's just a constant ride.
It's fascinating. Yeah, busy, and it's really great to hear about all the support from Oculus, and fascinated with touch. You know, I've heard accounts from a lot of people about that, and just can't wait to get my hands on those. You know, it's like VR. You don't understand what VR is until you put that headset on, and I'm sure it's the same thing with touch. It's going to probably blow my mind. What about you know, we're talking about getting support from the manufacturers of these headsets, but what about investments? Have you tried to seek out any investments for your projects, and you know, has there been challenges there?
So in the early days, I actually had investors seeking me out, and that caught me off guard because I wasn't completely ready for what was coming. And it started with Rothenberg Ventures. They brought me out, and we had a number of discussions, but ultimately the terms involved and a few other things were not in the best interest of Zero Transform. And so I can't really go into the details on that, but because, I mean, the River funding option may be great for some people, and so I encourage everybody to just do their research, do their homework, and see what fits them. I've talked to a number of other investors. I've done so many presentations. I can tell you that the VR business is slated to be a $20 billion industry by 2020, and that 48% of it's going to be in VR games specifically. So I could have a $60 million company in 5 years at a 0.48% market share, whatever. There's all these stats and all of these presentations and all of these little rules, and I'm taught time and time again that investors are a lot like the groundhog, where you can scare it off really easily with certain keywords, or if your shadow gets too close or something along those lines. And there is some truth to that. So, I mean, you have to be very mindful of, because when you talk to an investor, they're referencing everything you say to the amount of ambition you have, the passion, the support, the capability, how financially stable are you? Are you business savvy? Can you handle money? Things along those lines. And I've learned a lot since then. And so, generally speaking, they like to see people who have co-founders. So it's not just one person in charge and a few other things along those lines, because it kind of splits the responsibility of a startup. And a few other things. But what I've also learned is the culture changes region to region from investors. So what I found in the Bay Area is it's a lot like flipping houses. They want something that they can sell to a bigger company like Google in a couple of years. And this was not something I'm interested in. I mean, I am not here to build Zero Transform with the team that I've got just to sell it off. I'm looking for something much bigger and grander than that. And I have R&D titles for the next 7 years. Some incredible stuff coming down the pipe. And the thought of selling that is not going to happen. So then you have to look for something that's a little more local to where you live. And in my case, I'm still in Central Oregon, where Sony Bend is located. So I've been looking for investment here because their interest is more in line with mine, where they want to grow a company here instead of selling it off to somebody else. However, that takes a lot of time and effort, and if I go through an acceleration progress, that's like 90 days of me not developing anything. And so I really have to weigh the pros and cons of that, because it's really important to me to have some things ready for day one, and I'd really, really like to have Vanguard V be there. I don't know if you've seen any of the updated art or visuals coming down the pipeline, but it's certainly not what it was. It's a much bigger step in the right direction.
No, I don't think I have seen that. And there's no video, of course, that, because you're talking about just stills and art.
Well, there's some video samples on the Zero Transform channel on YouTube. Every now and then I upload something. I'm not entirely sure if it's set to public, though. I can check into that.
Certainly should take a look and see if that's there. Let's talk about like Oculus Connect and that experience. We got to meet up there. We stayed in the beach house, and Olivier and Cymatic Bruce and Reverend Kyle and the developers of VR Chat here. So I'm going to look for the video, and what was that, while you talk about your experience at Oculus Connect, and was that a worthwhile experience, and what did you come back from what did you gain from going to that?
So what I gained from that experience is that sleeping on 4 chairs necessarily isn't the best idea. I
So
mean,
you
there
were
was,
one of them that sat and that you slept in 4 chairs.
yeah, under a table. I mean,
Yeah,
it
no,
was
I
a pretty
remember.
big beach house, but every spot
Yeah.
was taken. And I feel bad for Reverend Kyle because he got up and I just stared at that spot and he was gone for like 20 minutes to half an hour. I'm like, screw it, I'm taking it.
Yeah,
And
he ended up
and
on the roof.
it was so comfortable at that point. So my apologies, Rev Kyle. But yeah, there's this familiarity, this language, this close. It's almost like a VR family. And we're all there just having the time of our lives. I mean, we're there because VR is actually a thing. It's here or it's on its way, depending on your point of view. But every one of us there was just glad that we could be there. And I always pictured the VR beach house, a bunch of us on like the beach with Gear VRs or whatever on, and all these beautiful women are walking by, and it's a great scene, but we wouldn't know, and we have like this tan line on our face of a head-mounted display and missing everything, but still smiling no matter what.
That's amazing.
But when I came to actual Oculus Connect stuff, I found something very interesting at the last one. So I started going to a lot of these panels, and I came to understand pretty quickly that these panels were trying to catch people up on a variety of things. And having done development for a while, I wasn't really gaining all that much. My favorite thing as far as the panels went was certainly watching John Carmack talk. I mean, that you just put him on a chair and watch the man go. It's awesome. But I eventually decided to just go to the demo room, and that was probably the best decision that I could have made because that's where Valve was, that's where Google was. They were looking at all this stuff. Tilt brush, I was right next to the tilt brush guys when the main guy from Valve came in and like, what is this? This is awesome. And now their stuff is all over Vive. And I was demoing Vanguard V, and these guys were curious if there was any way to make this mobile, and I pulled out my phone. It's like, look, I've already done that. And those happened to be the Google Cardboard guys, and they helped me tremendously last year to the point where I'm able to even talk to you now and develop things along these lines. So I would recommend to anybody, if you're looking for a way to catch the attention of higher-ups, go to that demo room. Have some really compelling content there, because that's where the magic is.
Say that again, please.
Go to the demo room and make sure to show off what you've got, because they have this room at Oculus Connect where you can just show off anything you've developed. You have to do it in like 15-minute or 30-minute slots, but there's usually a spot there for you.
Yep. Yeah, that was, the best stuff was trying all the demos and meeting all of the indie devs and seeing the community for sure. So I got your latest videos up. So we'll take a look at those, and then I want to talk about the future, and then we will talk to the audience. So let's see
Sounds
if this
great.
works.
So that last one with the clouds, that's where the cloud level is. This one was made last night. This is me testing out the helmet design using physically based renders, and that's Q's new model right there. It's using phase shift and a 3D camera for doing motion capture animation. And so all the animation here was done using that technique with no editing or cleanup or anything along those lines.
Wow, it's beautiful.
But
she's on.
the character is much further along than the one we made previously. And
Yeah.
we've got some fantastic concept artists helping us out as well.
And then the one you were talking about, the cloud tech, let's switch to that.
So this is some of the cloud tech that I'm using for the first boss in Vanguard V. Right at the end of level 1, you're told about the parasite cluster, and as you re-enter the atmosphere, you eventually go through into the clouds. And this is one of the things where Bit comes into play a little more, where things get obstructed, so he puts on a targeting view where everything glows and you can see through what's going on. But I needed something that was volumetric, something that I could lay effects on top of and below, and really make it so the clouds look like they're being spread apart as this thing plummets to the Earth. So I'm really looking forward to showing this in context.
Wow.
And that's just the Q model without a helmet.
She's a cutie.
Yep.
She's a keeper.
Yeah, we decided to give her a few extra years in her age. She was originally around the 16, 17, but now she's around 23 or so.
So I don't have to feel bad if I have a crush on her.
She's not real.
Yep, and this is how it's animated in Maya using phase shift. And so I'm in front of the camera at this point making all these motions, and it's responding accordingly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is incredible tech. It's come along so much over the last years that an indie can do things that were AAA studio quality with very little.
That's phase shift.
Wow.
Yeah, face shift. I mean, you're going to want to have to. You're going to have to know how to model and animate and things along those lines to set things up. But once you're there, I mean, the animation comes almost for free at that point.
We have with us one of our community members, Retina, that I'm sure would love to talk to you later. He's doing all of his own modeling and animation, and he just showed up on scene a couple weeks ago, and it's great. He's bringing content, and I can hear him wooting over there, so we'll chat with him later. So let's talk about the future. What's your future like? What do you see the future of VR like? What's the dream?
So currently, my future is taking what little resources I have and giving them to the people supporting me, so we can have these products out the door. I'm basically living off my wife's business. She does a lot of 3D printing and laser cut work that's proven to be somewhat successful. And yeah, it's been. I have to do a complete retooling of the Vanguard V and Proton Pulse websites, but I've been looking to get support from Sony, and that hasn't been working out so well as far as Vanguard V goes because they have so many other things that they're trying to support. But everything I do, every single dollar that comes in, or even working on Pulsar Arena, is the sole goal is to finish up Vanguard V and to support the team and to get the other products started, the other projects, because there's a lot to be done. And the next year is going to be an interesting one. I imagine that we're going to see a lot new devs that we haven't heard from before, and we're going to see a lot of our old devs start to not quite make it because it's so hard being an indie those first days. There's no install base. You don't get VR until you've tried VR, and making content is not easy. Every little thing takes a lot of time. So I'm really hoping a year from now I'll be sitting back and working on my 4th or 5th title.
And what do you see with a long-term, distant future? What VR will impact that? Maybe things that you dreamed about when you were younger. Not maybe so much like we're in it, and I think what we see is the next few years, and we're kind of really focused on that. But just some sort of science fiction. What do you think about?
Less barrier of entry. So what I mean by that is you can get immersion much more if you're not having to set up for it. The Gear VR has a couple aspects. You put it on your end. But having a built-in mic, having built-in headphones, having something that can track your skeletal movement without having to have a lot of accessories put on, that's what's going to make VR great, is not having to think about it. You put on the display and you go. And then having content that really caters to that. I'm seeing a lot of first-person shooters, or we saw at the Oculus announcement some third-person stuff that didn't really look like it was made for VR, but they But eventually developers are going to start realizing that if we make everything from the perspective of who you are supposed to be, from start to end, you can be part of this world. And I think my favorite experience that shows this right now is Elite Dangerous. And so one of the cases I made to bring up immersion is I have this cockpit with a low-frequency emitter on the seat and surround sound and all of this stuff that mimics the feel of the cockpit when you're in the game, and the joysticks are in the exact same place. And this was an experiment to see how lost can I get if things look and feel the same. And it's an incredible thing. It's going to be difficult for a lot of designers to ditch what we've come to develop over the last 30 years in gaming, how we handle local motion and a variety of other things. But once we get over that crutch, it's going to be incredible. And so the hardware is growing faster than ever. I'm very happy with what's out there now, and it's only going to get better from here. It's going to get lighter, thinner, and more advanced. And so that really... I'm looking more towards the developers than I am at the hardware at this point, because they make the worlds these experiences that we can all get lost in. I mean, look at this. I'm sitting in this room. There's a moon over there.
Yeah.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's